Imagine checking into a cozy Airbnb, ready to unwind and enjoy a getaway, only to discover that your every move is being recorded by hidden cameras. Today, I'm going to share with you 4 chilling true stories from individuals who found themselves in this unsettling situation. These stories will make you question the safety of your private moments and the real intentions of those who host these rentals. As you listen, prepare to feel a shiver down your spine as the veil of trust you once had in temporary accommodations begins to fray. The unsettling reality of hidden surveillance is more common than you might think, and what these brave individuals uncovered will leave you questioning the security of your own space. So, buckle up and brace yourself, because what you're about to hear could forever change the way you approach your next stay away from home. The truth may be lurking just behind the camera lens. I never thought much about hidden cameras. It was just one of those things that lived in the back of my mind, a half-formed fear among the infinite possibilities of modern technology. The Airbnb I'd booked for the weekend was advertised as cozy and quaint, nestled in the outskirts of a sleepy town. When I arrived, the air felt heavier, thick, with an unsettling silence. The creaking of the old wooden floorboards echoed through the small house, and I could smell the stale scent of something musty clinging to the walls. It didn't help that I was alone. The thought of spending the weekend by myself gnawed at me like a ravenous animal. I had come here to recharge, to escape the chaos of city life, but even as I wandered through the dimly lit rooms, I felt a strange discomfort creeping along my spine. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, like I was being watched. On my first night, I set up my things and tried to distract myself with a movie, but halfway through, the flickering light from the screen was interrupted by a strange noise, a faint rustling coming from the direction of the bathroom. The sound was so subtle that I almost convinced myself it was just my imagination. But then it happened again, more distinct this time, a soft thud, followed by the unmistakable whisper of fabric brushing against an unseen surface. I paused the movie and listened intently, my heart pounding in my chest. The rustling stopped, and silence enveloped the room once more. Mustering whatever courage I had, I stood up and walked toward the bathroom, each step echoing in the stillness. The door was ajar, and I peered inside. Nothing. Just a small, dimly lit space, the light swinging slightly as if someone had just left. My pulse raced as I turned back to the living room, shaking off the eerie feeling that crawled up my neck. I decided to explore the house a bit more. Maybe it would take my mind off whatever I thought I had heard. The kitchen was old, with white cabinets that seemed to be peeling away from their hinges. I opened a few drawers. They were empty, save for some dust, and an odd assortment of utensils that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Then I spotted it. Tucked behind a stack of old cookbooks on the counter was what appeared to be a small, cylindrical object. My heart dropped. It looked like a camera lens, shiny and unblinking in the dim light. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, a sinking feeling settling in my stomach. There were no obvious wires or attachments, but it was definitely a camera. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone jump out of the shadows. Okay. It's just a leftover from the last guests, I murmured to myself, trying to rationalize the situation. I placed the camera back where I found it, but the unease lingered. After a restless night, plagued by dreams of dark figures lurking outside my window, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. My eyes shot open, and I held my breath, straining to listen. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, like someone testing the floor before stepping down. I could feel my heart racing again, pounding against my ribcage. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The footsteps stopped abruptly. A heavy silence fell over the house, and I felt a chill sweep through me. I got out of bed, my legs shaky, and made my way to the hallway. The air was cold and thick, almost suffocating. I reached the end of the hall but found nothing. Just a wall. My mind raced. Had I imagined it? Was I really that jumpy? I turned back, just as something flickered out of the corner of my eye. I looked down the hallway again and saw it, a shadow, darting quickly around the corner. Panic surged through me, and I rushed toward the exit. Maybe I should have just called the owner or the police, but before I could think of anything else, I grabbed my phone and opened the Airbnb app, hoping to find a way to contact the host. That's when I noticed a new message. It was from the host, sent just moments ago. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're settling in okay. Please let me know if you need anything." I hesitated. The message felt too casual, too eager, considering how isolated I trapped the old house. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time a video link. Confused, I clicked on it, only to be met with a grainy, distorted image. I squinted at the small screen, and my breath hitched. It showed a view of what looked like the living room of the house, but the perspective was strange, as though the camera was set on a shelf somewhere. I felt my blood run cold as I recognized my own silhouette moving around the room. No, I whispered, my stomach churning. I fumbled through the other messages, but they were all from the host, all seemingly harmless. I needed to get out. I bolted for the front door, only to find it locked. The handle wouldn't budge. Panic settled in as I rattled the door, pushing against it with all my strength. "Help! Let me out!" I screamed, my voice echoing against the walls. The footsteps returned, echoing behind me, slow and deliberate. I spun around to face the sound, my heart racing. There at the end of the hallway was a dark figure. It was just a silhouette, but the outline was unmistakably human. I could barely breathe. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure stood still, unmoving, as if waiting for something. "Get away from me!" I was ready to scream again when suddenly the figure stepped forward and the light caught their face in an eerie glow. It was the host, smiling unnaturally wide, their eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "Don't be scared," they said, their voice soft yet unsettling. "Just want to keep you safe." Before I could process their words, the hallway grew darker, the shadows deepening. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me as I glanced toward the windows. The daylight was fading fast, and I realized I was trapped in this house, alone with someone who had been watching me the entire time. My vision narrowed as the shadow loomed closer. The camera lens, once a mere object of curiosity, now felt like a terrifying reminder that I was never really alone, and my weekend getaway had turned into a nightmare of my own making, or perhaps of theirs. I'm still processing the events of that fateful weekend, even weeks later. It all started when my friends and I planned a getaway to an Airbnb in the outskirts of a small town. The cabin was rustic, surrounded by dense woods that swallowed the light, creating an almost claustrophobic atmosphere. I thought it would be the perfect escape from our daily grind, an opportunity to bond and unwind. Instead, it would become a weekend of terror I couldn't have anticipated. We arrived at dusk, the sun barely peeking through the thick canopy of trees. The cabin stood like a relic from another age, wooden beams creaking under the weight of its own history. My friends were immediately eager to explore, while I felt a shiver run down my spine. My unease seemed silly as we unloaded the car, laughter echoing through the air. "Come on, man, don't be such a downer," Raphael teased, tossing me the keys. Inside, the walls were adorned with dusty paintings that seemed to watch our every move. I brushed off the feeling of being observed, convincing myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I couldn't shake the idea that something about this place was off. I shrugged it off as the remnants of a long week at work, the fatigue amplifying my nerves. As the night deepened, we gathered around the fireplace, the flames dancing in a way that almost felt alive. We shared ghost stories, each one more elaborate than the last, our imaginations fueled by the shadows that flickered against the walls. "What if someone was watching us right now?" Juliana laughed, a light-hearted jest that made everyone chuckle nervously. I forced a smile but couldn't quite laugh it off. After a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere began to shift. The spirits of the night started to blur our boundaries, and my friends dared each other to venture into the woods. A feeling of dread began to creep up on me, like icy fingers gripping my heart. "Maybe we should just stay here?" I suggested, but my voice was drowned out by their excitement. It wasn't long before they decided to check out the neighboring cabin, supposedly just as old, with tales of its history that sent chills down my spine. "Well, just take a look, dude. What's the worst that could happen?" Tiago exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Against my better judgment, I followed. The night air was thick with silence as we walked along the overgrown path leading to the other cabin. Stars blinked down at us, their light barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. We reached the door, and I hesitated as I pushed it open. The hinges groaned, almost as if protesting our invasion. Inside, it was even darker, the faint moonlight barely piercing the grime on the windows.
"Dude, check this out!" Raphael's voice echoed from the corner, a flicker of movement catching my attention. I stepped closer, my heart racing, only to find him pointing at an old, dusty camera resting on a rickety table. "This is kinda creepy, right?" He laughed, but I could see the unease in his eyes. Suddenly a chill swept through the room, and the air felt charged, like the moments before a storm.
I shivered, stepping back as I glanced around, half expecting someone, or something, to emerge from the shadows. "Let's just get out of here," I urged, but they were too excited, rummaging through the debris, their laughter filling the air. The atmosphere shifted again. I felt something watching us, a presence lingering just beyond the periphery of my vision. "Guys, let's go," I insisted, panic bubbling in my chest. But it wasn't until I turned to leave that I heard it, a soft whisper that seemed to echo through the cabin. "Stay!" I froze, paralyzed by the sound. My friends didn't notice. They were too engrossed in their discovery. I turned to them, voice trembling. "Did you hear that?" They scoffed, laughing it off as a figment of my imagination. "Chill, man. It's just the wind," Juliana said, rolling her eyes. I wanted to believe her, but the whisper had felt too real, too deliberate. After what felt like an eternity, we finally decided to head back. As we exited the cabin, I glanced back, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure standing in the window, pale, almost featureless, watching us leave. I blinked, and it was gone. Shaking the image from my mind, I hurried down the path, my heart pounding. Back in our cabin, I tried to shake off the lingering dread. We huddled around the fireplace, but the warmth felt distant. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense that we had disturbed something ancient and restless. The evening wore on, the stories becoming more frantic. My friends continued to drink, but I couldn't join in. A gnawing anxiety settled in my stomach, and I excused myself for some fresh air. The woods were eerily silent, the oppressive darkness wrapping around me like a shroud. I leaned against the cabin, taking deep breaths, trying to calm myself. That's when I heard it again. The whisper, gentle yet insistent. "Stay with me." I stumbled back, heart racing. "Hello," I called out, my voice quivering in the cold night. There was no response, just the rustling of leaves. I turned to head back inside, but the door slammed shut. I rushed towards it, my fists pounding against the wood. "Guys, let me in!" Panic set in as I realized I was trapped outside, the darkness closing in. I could hear laughter inside, but it felt distant, as if they were mocking me. "Let me in! Now!" I screamed, but my voice felt swallowed by the night. And then, silence. Suddenly the whisper returned, louder, almost a command now. "Stay with me!" I spun around, frantically searching for the source. It was then that I noticed the shadows, figures moving just beyond the tree line, their shapes indistinct, but undeniably there. I could feel their eyes on me, cold and unyielding. With desperation clawing at my throat, I pounded against the door again. "Please, open the door!" The laughter faded, replaced with an unsettling hush. I felt a shift in the atmosphere, a dread settling like fog. Finally, the door creaked open, and I was yanked inside, Raphael's grip firm on my shoulder. "Dude, what's wrong with you?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I glanced back at the door, heart pounding. "Didn't you hear it?" "Hear what?" he asked, shaking his head. I tried to explain, but the words tangled in my throat as the shadows gathered outside, waiting. The night stretched on, filled with an oppressive silence, and the laughter of my friends felt hollow against the backdrop of my fear. I settled into a corner, clutching my knees, knowing the terror was far from over. As dawn approached, the forest began to stir, a gentle breeze swirling through the trees. We packed our things quickly, the air thick with an unspoken tension. I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed, a weight pressing down on me as we drove away from the cabin. Glancing back in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw something move in the woods, a fleeting glimpse of pale skin and dark eyes watching our departure. The town faded behind us, but the shadows lingered in my mind, a reminder that some things are better left undiscovered. Some whispers are meant to stay in the dark. I remember the first time I noticed something was off in that particular Airbnb. The dim light barely illuminated the cramped living room, and the air felt thick, almost suffocating. It was a small, old house on the outskirts of Houston, Texas, where my friend Sarah had suggested we spend the weekend. We were there to escape the chaos of our daily lives, just a couple of friends hoping to unwind. Little did we know how that weekend would unfold. On the first night, as we settled in, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that clung to the air. "It's just an old house," Sarah said, laughing it off as she flicked through her phone. "I mean, look at this place. It's charming." But as I looked around, I couldn't help but focus on the way the shadows seemed to shift just a little too much. The walls creaked as if they were whispering secrets. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just my imagination. We cooked dinner and shared stories over a bottle of cheap wine, the laughter momentarily pushing away the unsettling atmosphere. But as the night wore on, I felt a chill creep into my bones. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows. "Did you hear that?" I asked, eyeing the door leading to the small hallway. "Hear what?" Sarah replied, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Just the wind," I said, trying to sound casual. But I knew it was more than that. As the hours passed, the feeling of being watched intensified. I made my way to the bathroom, passing a small hallway that felt unnaturally cold. Glancing down it, I thought I saw a flicker of movement, a shadow darting just out of sight. "You're being ridiculous," I muttered to myself, shaking my head as I turned on the tap. That night, I couldn't sleep. The distorted faces of old photographs on the walls seemed to watch me with hollow eyes. I tossed and turned, my mind racing, replaying the shadows I thought I saw earlier. At one point, I thought I heard a soft whisper, a voice that wasn't quite there, but still sent chills down my spine. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt like a warning. The morning came too slowly. I stepped out of bed, rubbing my eyes, and quickly made my way to the kitchen, where Sarah was already brewing coffee. "You look like hell," she joked, a weak smile on her face. "Just didn't sleep well," I replied, glancing outside at the grey, overcast sky. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with this place. After breakfast, we decided to explore the neighborhood, hoping to clear our minds. As we wandered through the neighborhood, I noticed an old, abandoned house just a block away. Its windows were boarded up, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. "Did you see that?" I asked Sarah, pointing. "It looks like it's been empty for years." "Yeah, it's creepy. Let's not go near it," she said, pulling me along. But I felt an inexplicable pull toward the house. I kept glancing back, almost mesmerized by its decaying presence. We spent the rest of the day visiting nearby shops and cafes, but my mind kept drifting back to that house. I felt drawn to it, as if there was something waiting for me on the other side of its rotting door. As the sun began to set, a sense of dread washed over me. At dinner, I noticed Sarah looking increasingly pale. "You okay?" I asked, concerned. "I don't know. I just have this weird feeling like we shouldn't be here," she said, her eyes darting around the restaurant. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It seemed I wasn't alone in my unease. That night, the darkness felt thicker than before. We retreated to our rooms early, Sarah insisting she was too tired to stay up. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows dancing against the walls. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard it again, the whispering clearer now. It was coming from the hallway. My heart raced as I got out of bed, creeping toward the door. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt the air shift, colder and heavier. The whispers transformed into soft, pleading sounds, and I froze. "Help me," it seemed to say, echoing through the stillness. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but the curiosity pulled me forward into the depths of the house. I reached the end of the hallway, where the door to the basement stood ajar. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of desperate sounds that clawed at my sanity. I glanced back. What if Sarah heard me? What if something happened to me down there? But I couldn't turn away. Swallowing hard, I descended the creaking stairs. The basement was dark and damp, the air stale and suffocating. I fumbled for my phone to illuminate the space, revealing dusty furniture covered in white sheets. The whispers echoed around me, now pleading and frantic. "Please, help me." My heart raced as I began to panic. I needed to leave. But as I turned to ascend the stairs, I felt something brush against my leg, a chill that sent a jolt of fear coursing through me. I swung my phone's light around, but all I saw were shadows. "Sarah!" I called out, my voice shaking. Silence met my plea, and I felt a growing sense of dread. I was trapped, surrounded by darkness. Then, in the corner of my eye, I glimpsed a figure, a silhouette, standing just beyond the light. I couldn't breathe. "Who are you?" I stammered, backing away slowly. The figure moved closer, its features obscured, but I could feel its gaze piercing through me. "Help me," it whispered again, stretching its hand toward me. I turned and fled up the stairs, adrenaline fueling my every movement. Bursting through the door, I frantically searched for Sarah. "We have to leave," I yelled, finding her sitting on the couch, her face ghostly pale. "What's wrong?" she asked, confused. "There's something in the basement," I gasped, trying to catch my breath. But before I could explain, we heard a loud crash coming from the kitchen. "Stay here!" I shouted, but Sarah followed me anyway. We moved cautiously toward the noise, the air thick with tension. When we reached the kitchen, our hearts dropped. The table was overturned, and the chairs lay scattered. I could feel the frigid air wrapping around us, a warning to turn back. In that moment, I knew we weren't alone. The whispers returned, now a chorus of frantic voices. "Get out! Get out!" Panic surged through me, and I grabbed Sarah's wrist. "We need to go now." As we stumbled back toward the front door, I felt a heavy presence behind us, but I couldn't look back. We burst out of the house, gasping for air, the cold night air hitting us like a slap. I didn't stop until we reached the car, fumbling for the keys in my shaking hands. "Drive, just drive," I shouted, and Sarah didn't hesitate. She slammed the gas pedal, and we sped away from that cursed place. As we drove into the night, the darkness seemed to swallow the house behind us. Whatever we encountered there, whatever had been waiting in the shadows, it stayed there, lingering in the air like an unshakable dread. We didn't speak for a long time, the weight of what we experienced hanging between us. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had disturbed something ancient and malevolent. Even now, as I sit here recalling that night, I can still hear the whispers echoing softly in the corners of my mind, a haunting reminder that some places are better left undisturbed. I remember the day I arrived at my Airbnb as if it were yesterday. It was a quaint little cottage nestled on the outskirts of a sleepy town in Texas, with its wooden beams creaking under the weight of years. An odd sense of nostalgia washed over me as I stepped inside, the scent of aged pine mingling with something faintly musty, perhaps from the dampness of the walls. As I settled in, I marveled at the rustic charm, completely unaware of the darkness lurking just beyond the threshold. The first night was uneventful, save for my own restless thoughts. I had come here to escape the chaos of city life, to breathe in the fresh air and let solitude wash over me. But as the sun set, the room seemed to shrink around me, shadows dancing in the corners, whispering secrets I couldn't quite decipher. I tried to dismiss it as mere paranoia, the natural fears that come with silence. But then I heard it, a faint, rustling sound, like whispers carried on the wind. I told myself it was just the trees outside, swaying in the night breeze. Yet, the feeling of being watched crept into my bones, making me shiver. "It's just your imagination," I muttered under my breath as I tucked deeper beneath the blankets. I could almost convince myself, but then again, something felt decidedly off. The second day brought a curious discovery. While exploring the cottage, I stumbled upon an old, tarnished key hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the bedroom. It was small, ornate, and seemed completely out of place in a vacation rental. I found myself drawn to it, its mystery compelling me to search for what it might unlock. My instincts screamed at me to leave it be, but curiosity wrestled me to the ground, and I couldn't resist the urge to investigate. The key turned out to belong to a small, locked door at the back of the house. After contemplating it through the remainder of the day, I finally summoned the courage to insert the key into the rusty lock as the moonlight bathed the room in an otherworldly glow. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that spiraled down into darkness. The chill that enveloped me was palpable, each breath forming a fog in the cool air. "This is really stupid," I whispered to myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to know what lay below. Step by step, I descended the staircase, my heart pounding an erratic rhythm in my chest. As I reached the bottom, I was greeted by a cramped cellar, the damp walls lined with old wooden crates, their contents long forgotten. The air was stale, filled with the scent of mold and something else, something metallic. I flicked on my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The light fell upon a collection of dusty, strange objects. An old doll with a cracked face, a collection of faded photographs, and what appeared to be an antique mirror, its surface tarnished and murky. Each item held a story, and I felt an overwhelming urge to explore further. But as I reached for the doll, a sudden chill rushed through me and I heard it, a soft giggle echoing from the shadows behind me. I spun around, heart racing. "Hello!" I called out, my voice trembling. There was only silence, thick and suffocating. I told myself it was just the wind, but deep down, a primal fear gripped me. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the edge of a crate, sending me crashing to the floor. The impact knocked the air from my lungs and I quickly scrambled to my feet, desperate to escape the oppressive darkness. As I fled up the stairs, I heard whispers cascading around me. They weren't trying to communicate, they were mocking me, taunting me for my foolishness. I burst through the door and slammed it shut behind me, locking it with shaking hands. My mind raced, flooded with questions. Had I imagined it? Was it just remnants of the previous occupants? Or was something truly sinister at play? That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house reverberated in my ears, every shadow a phantom waiting to pounce. I tried to convince myself that dawn would wash away the horrors of the night, but as the first light crept through the curtains, I found myself trapped in a haze of dread. Several hours passed, and I decided to leave the cottage, to breathe in the daylight and the illusion of safety. But as I stepped outside, my heart sank. My car, my only means of escape, sat motionless in the driveway, the battery dead. I was stranded. "This can't be happening," I muttered, panic rising within me like a tide. I could have sworn I heard that same giggle again, floating through the air, teasing me from the depths of the cottage. I knew I had to go back inside. I had to confront whatever was haunting me. With every step back to the door, my resolve wavered. The shadows seemed to grow thicker, as if alive, pulsing with malevolence. Yet I pressed on, driven by a desperate need for answers. Inside, I was met with silence, the atmosphere thick with an unsettling weight. The cellar door loomed before me, an invitation and a warning all at once. I steeled myself, gripping the handle and pulling it open once more. The darkness beckoned me back, and I descended into its depths, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. As I reached the bottom, I was met with a sight that stole my breath. The old doll was now upright, its cracked face staring directly at me, a chilling grin plastered across its features. The photographs had shifted, their subjects now distorted, faces twisted into grotesque shapes. And the mirror, oh, the mirror. Instead of my reflection, I saw a swirling void, a darkness so profound it seemed to breathe. "Leave this place," a voice whispered, echoing through the cellar, resonating deep within my bones. You shouldn't be here. I stumbled back, instinctively reaching for the stairs, but the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping me in the suffocating darkness. Panic surged through me and I pounded on the door, but it held firm. "Help! Please!" I cried out, my voice lost in the void. The whispers morphed into cacophony, a symphony of torment. I could feel the coldness seeping into my skin, invading my very being. Then, in a moment of despair, I turned back to the mirror. I needed to see, needed to know. I stepped closer, the surface shimmering like water. As I reached out to touch it, the void consumed me. I was pulled in, dragged into the abyss, my screams swallowed by the darkness. That's all I remember before waking up, gasping in the confines of the cottage, the sunlight streaming through the windows as if nothing had happened. My heart raced, and I glanced around, the air thick with an unsettling calm. I rushed to the cellar door, trembling hands gripping the handle, but as I turned it, I found it locked tight. The key, my key, was gone. Perhaps I had imagined it all, but deep within my gut, a gnawing fear remained. As the shadows danced once more, I knew I had to leave, but something held me there, something sinister, lurking in the corners of my mind, whispering a promise that I could never escape. So, have you ever had a creepy encounter that still gives you chills? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your tales might just inspire our next spooky adventure. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you can join us for more thrills and chills. Until next time, if you dare to return.